It has been another wild 24 hours in South Africa. The economic freedom fighters have applied to join the DA's court case against the VAT budget, where they argue that the entire passage of the VAT budget to be passed should be voided, declared null and void, and done again, because the DA argues that there were some procedural faults. There were some mistakes in the procedure in the standing committee to approve the fiscal framework of the budget, which renders the entire process and the VAT budget unlawful. So we need to talk about that. Then there's ANC Secretary General and world-class yapper Fikile Mbalula, who has come out and said a raft of interesting things. And it's important with Fikile to always take what he says seriously, but also always with a big old pile of salt, a salt pan of salt with Fikile Mbalula, as we will talk about in a second. But it's important to listen to him because he's in all of the most important rooms in the ANC, but he also is a big yapper. So sometimes he says things that turn out to be absolutely true further down the road, and you go, oh, he knew. We should have listened to him. He's a good bellwether, an indicator about what's going to happen. But sometimes he's just a big yapper. So we'll talk about him. And also, there are now tons of reports about a lot of fighting and disagreement within the African National Congress before they decided to create all these new rules for the GNU and not just evict the Democratic Alliance. So we need to talk about whether or not there are big plays being made against Ramaphosa within the ANC. Eric, that was a long intro, but that's because there's a lot going on.
There really is, yeah.
Usually
right.
The intros are much shorter, but I was like, oh no, there's so much to talk about. Okay, let's start at the start. So the Economic Freedom Fighters has applied to join the legal action launched by the Democratic Alliance that seeks to suspend the report of the Standing Committee on Finance of the 2025 Fiscal Framework pending the finalization of Part B, blah, 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 blah. They're basically trying to stop the VAT budget and make them do it all over again. And I have to say, I know I said this on ENCA on the Dan Kordashow TV show on Monday, but like the ANC has a singularly extraordinary talent, which is to get the DA and the EFF to be on the same team. Two groups that absolutely hate each other on the same side. But it's really significant that the EFF has now swallowed their pride, because it did look like initially they weren't going to join the DA in that court application. And now Helen Zille is doing her roast on Showmax and walking around in fireman's fatigues. She must be so bored. But now the EFF has joined this court application, they clearly have now decided in calculus, the fighters, that if they can get on this court application, even if it's with the DA initially and it succeeds, which some legal experts off the record are starting to say could happen, then they could sell that as a win in thwarting the VAT budget. And then, of course, it'll be so interesting because if they have to do it all over, will Action SA do the same proposal again? Or have they realized how badly they screwed up and will do differently? The awkwardness is, if they realize they screwed up and they have to do it over again and they do differently, they're basically admitting that they were wrong.
True that.
But it may in the long run mean that they won't end up being the people who caused this massive VAT increase. So maybe.
Interesting times.
So now let's talk about this extraordinary press conference that Fikile Mbalula had yesterday. So if you have limited to no understanding of Fikile Mbalula, he is objectively a very funny man. Like, he is funny. He can make the country laugh. He can also make the country really listen to him. And he has been extremely high profile in the ANC for a long time, even in the Zuma years, but particularly since Ramaphosa came into power. And he is a great entertainer. He's a great yapper. He knows how to command attention towards himself, which is a fundamental skill that politicians need to have, which is one of the reasons why I think he has done so well in many years in the ANC, even though he doesn't have an explicit constituency. So he doesn't have like a whole province who backs him and advocates for him, which means that he gets into positions of power, even though he doesn't have branches lobbying for him aggressively, which is the traditional way that you get to power in the ANC. You need enough of the branches across the country to back you. He never really had a constituency, but he just managed to attach himself to hyper-powerful people. Now, he often says mad things. I think he often just loses control. Like, oh yeah, you were talking about that time. What did he say a few months ago? Yeah, he was pre-election maybe, and he was talking to an ANC gathering, but it was obviously on camera. And
Yeah, and he mentioned, basically duping everybody into talking about it like a fire pool. And we obviously know what that's referencing.
he was complaining about how dare Zuma now go run against the ANC and how he humiliated all of the ANC leaders because they all, what was it? We went out and told South Africa it was a fire pool, even if we knew that it wasn't a fire pool.
Yep.
So he has these loose-lipped moments where or maybe he doesn't think that they're loose-lipped, but where he gets comfortable and he gets yapping. But the other thing is, he is often a bellwether because he constantly ends up on the right side. So like, he was one of the earliest people at the exact right moment to go, okay, I'm not with Zuma anymore, I'm going with Ramaphosa. He has consistently picked the right team. So I think what we can say about Fikile Mbalula is that he's extremely good at reading the tea leaves about intra-ANC politics, where it's going, and who is rising in power. So as much as he does say some wild stuff, in amongst all of that, he also often says things that we can go, okay, if he's talking about that, this position is rising within the African National Congress, I reckon. So he came out in this press conference yesterday, and it was a wild press conference. It was the one where he said that they're going to reconfigure, the ANC is going to try and reconfigure and reset the GNU without really saying what that meant. It's also the one where he said that they might create like some kind of rules or new standards about how GNU partners need to operate. And then he said this.
He hates the ANC with passion. Him and Floyd combined. I don't know why they are fighting. I think that's a movie we are being subjected to. That fight of Floyd and Julius, it's not real. That thing is just a movie. It's fiction. These are buddies. So Floyd has been sent to go and manage JZ and that MK party and Dalimpo. So it's a big fiction, my brother.
Okay, if that is true, give Julius an Oscar, give Floyd a SAFTA, because wow, they have been at each other's throats for the last handful of months or longer, ever since that happened. Julius has been screaming and crying betrayal. He's looked so injured. And I just feel like if this was the case, then Julius Malema would have played it better. He would have played it as, I don't like Floyd, but we're fine. The EFF is fine. We are strong. We're okay without him. But instead, he's been emotionally lashing out and flailing, including also Adambuyiseni and Lozi, in a way that screams a truly emotionally injured person who is worried and paranoid about the future of their party, that screams worrying that this is a serious damaging moment for the EFF that he wasn't ready for, and a real betrayal, and that it is hurting the EFF and he's worried about the EFF's future. I feel like if this was all a ruse, he wouldn't be acting like this. I think.
You're right. It would be an insanely good performance. And we should not forget that I wonder if Fikile watches this show. Because he did mention that it was like a movie.
South Africa is a movie.
It is a movie.
The watch party. I will say, Fikile and I have actually spoken, because when I was 5FM's breakfast host, I only got my driver's license at 27. And he was Minister of Transport at the time. And I don't know how, but somehow a producer at 5 persuaded him to come on and congratulate me and said I was an inspiration to the young people of the nation. And we've had no further contact. Okay, so I personally don't think that Fikile is right about this. I personally don't think so. I think that MK and Floyd moving there has been actively too damaging for the economic freedom fighters. I think it's been really bad for them. It's also been really good for the MK party, even with the civil war going on between Duduzile's faction, Duduzile Zuma's faction, and Floyd's faction. And Floyd has taken so many EFF powers, that side, that I don't think that Fikile is right, or that maybe he knows he's wrong and he's telling the truth. But that's the other thing that Fikile Mbalula is a really talented politician at: deflection and distraction and rerouting of the narrative to make people talk about other stuff. But as I said, we have to talk about it, because very often what Fikile says is an early warning sign of the way that the ANC is going. And that's where we come to these reports from some news organizations, from insiders, ITKs in the nose, that the ANC top brass had a huge debate on Monday, and many of the most powerful people, including Vice President Paul Mashatile, wanted the ANC to kick the DA out of the Government of National Unity. And according to the ITK sources, only at the end when Ramaphosa said, everybody cool down, we don't have to do this, they will put the noose around their own necks and they will get rid of themselves. Only then did the position change. And if that is true, that's really important. As we said yesterday on the show, Ramaphosa is in his last term as national president. You can stay ANC president, you can get re-elected, but no one's really ever done that. The last two ANC presidents were nixed before the end of their terms. That's Zuma and Mbeki. Ramaphosa knows that the closer it gets to the end of his term, the more shenanigans are going to shenan again in the ANC about who's going to succeed him. We know that Paul Mashatile, by ANC old school tradition, as the vice president, should be the chosen one. But we also know that all bets are off and all ANC traditions have been upset ever since Ramaphosa, as vice president for Zuma, had to have a contest against Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, supported by Zuma's faction. So once that happened, suddenly that tradition of deputy becoming president was undermined, and now it's anybody's game. Now, most people think that it will be Paul Mashatile at this point, but it's still very early. The next ANC elective conference is only in 2027. We do know that Mashatile has a very powerful constituency, particularly from Gauteng, in the African National Congress. And we do know that the closer we get to the end of Ramaphosa's time as national president, the more different people within the ANC will start going, well, I'm not going to be president, but I'm going to throw my lot in with someone who I think is going to be president. And if a Mashatile faction is starting to coalesce, and they really threw up their voices on Monday, and as we said on the show yesterday, Mashatile, for the first time now since probably COVID, has had a lot of press. He's been talking of betrayal and DA ministers should be ashamed. These are big fighting words, as we have analyzed. Maybe he's decided this is the moment to flex and start expressing himself. Maybe he's decided this is the moment to start making a move to entrench his candidacy for the next presidency. There's no evidence yet that they're going to try and kick out Ramaphosa. Remember, Ramaphosa's faction runs that party, runs it. But slowly but surely now we have to start to ask, okay, is Ramaphosa's path narrowing? Are his options starting to shrink a little bit as he has to listen to others and play all these games?
A little bit of devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
Do you think that by making all this noise about wanting the DA out and all this betrayal and things, that we then end up with Ramaphosa being the reason why the GNU collapsed and allowing someone like Paul Mashatile and his faction to move up and replace him?
Could be. But you know what the flip side of that narrative play is?
Tell me.
The flip side of that narrative play is to release messaging to the country saying that some in the ANC want the DA out. So then when the DA is allowed to stay in, then everyone goes, thank you, Ramaphosa, the DA is still in. And then if the DA chooses to walk, then it's all the DA, because Ramaphosa did all he could to keep them in. And that's where we go back to the game of chicken from yesterday. Because Ramaphosa, as we know, as we've spoken about, he always wins.
It's true.
And there'll be a day where he loses, but most politicians win, lose, win, lose, win, lose.
Yeah.
He always wins. And I wonder if, you know, the one thing about the ANC that Mbalula said in that presser yesterday, he said it and then some analysts said it too afterwards, which is like the ANC has been doing internal to ANC politics at this level of competition for 30 years. Most other political parties haven't. Helen says who runs the DA. She runs the DA, but she says who's the face of that. Julius runs EFF. Floyd, slip of the tongue.
Oh.
Jacob Zuma, Freudian what? Jacob Zuma runs MK. Patriotic Alliance is run by Gayton, etc., all the way down to Patricia Diddle running good. But the ANC has known how to do coalition, known how to do a negotiation, and known how to handle factionalism to move out enemies and get primacy. They know how to do that. They're so experienced at it. And so when it comes to these kind of public battles, I don't know how many more times the DA can lose and end up with egg on their face, but they are being taught a lesson in how to manage this kind of thing. And before you get all touched on your studios and say that I'm just an ANC puppet, I'm acknowledging that they're very good at politics. I think they are terrible for this country. Terrible for this country. But you've got to recognize how good they are at playing the game, I reckon. So let's see.